you can see the king standing on the column, but right next to the castle you will find two columns. One first is divided in 4 pieces. This is the column that the king was standing on it till the Second World War, because during the war the column was destroyed and it broke into 4 pieces, which right now are put next to the castle. And the next one is even older one, because already during the history of the column it needed a renovation. So once it was renovated and the column, the old one, was put here next to the castle. Entering the courtyard of the royal castle, you can have a look at the different parts which show you different historical period, so different chapters in the history of the castle. The oldest one is of course the one built from the red brick. So this is the one which commemorates the Gothic history of the royal castle. However, then we have these red ones which are from the period of the king who moved the residence here, so Sigimund I. We have also the one on the left side with one balcony which comes from the 18th century, and also later from the 18th century the one with the long balcony. Looking at the facades, look at the color of different ornaments. You can see that some of them are lighter and some of them are darker. The darker ones are the original parts that somehow survived the Second World War and were used in the reconstruction. So if you see any white light elements, it means that those are the new elements. Now I want to take you to a very special place on the top of the tower with the clock, which is quite a unique place. To be honest, I haven't been there by myself because it's a place which is normally not open for the visitors. There is a technical terrace, but today we will have a very unique opportunity to visit it. So let's go upstairs. Wow, this is impressive. It's the first time I'm here, and this is the first time I see the stadium from this perspective, and also the view on the whole courtyard. Looks really, really cool. And the view of the Cathedral of Warsaw and the Jesuit Church and the Świętojańska Street. But let's go to see the Castle Square. Wow, this is something. This is a view 1 in a million. Definitely not possible to see the city from this perspective from any place that I would visited before. Great view of the column, the old town in the first ground, but if you look further, and this is probably what catch your attention as well, is the skyline of Warsaw, starting with the tower with the clock on the top, the Palace of Culture and Science, and then going to the right through all the skyscrapers and the modern buildings. Every day, as you can see, like now people are standing on the Castle Square, and every day at 11:15 you can hear 3 times this bugle call played from the tower of the royal castle. And today we had this very unique experience, and we could be here and actually see how it works. We are entering the royal apartments on the first floor of the castle. Let's see some of the nicest rooms here. The Great Assembly Room is the biggest hall in the castle. It was here that all the official celebrations took place. So here there were balls, concerts, and banquets organized, as well as theatrical performances were staged. Have a look up at the ceiling. You can see there a huge painting that depicts the disentanglement of chaos. It was reconstructed after the war, as the Great Assembly Hall was the first victim of the Second World War in the castle. It burst into flames already in September 1939. Let's have a look at two statues that are standing next to the doors. Here you can see the last king of Poland, King Stanislaw Augustus. On the left-hand side, there is a marble statue of Apollo, which has a face of the king. And on the other side of the doorway, we have a statue of Minerva that has a face of Russian Empress Catherine the Great. Both of them survived the Second World War and came back here after the renovation. If you are looking for original trails and elements in the castle, you should definitely spend more time in this room. This is the Knight's Hall. The idea came from the king himself, King Stanislaw Augustus. The aim of this room was to show the importance of people that had an impact in the history of Poland, as well as show some important events from the history of Poland. So if you look around, you can see here 6 large paintings depicting some very important events from the history. The painting behind me depicts a historical bottle of Vienna in the 17th century. Apart from it, we have 2 statues that draw our attention. One of them, on the right-hand side, represents the fame. This one prays all the people that were chosen by the king. On the other hand, on the other side, we have Kronos, who help us realize the passing of the time. Apart from these statues, we have several oval paintings and then small bust sculptures that are also representing people picked up by the king. Those are some of the most famous people in the history of Poland. Have a look at the one above the Kronos. You can see there Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus. In the marble room, you have a chance to look in the eyes of the last Polish king, Stanisław August. He lived and worked in the castle in the 18th century. Apart from him, you can also see here portraits of 22 other Polish monarchs. They were all painted by Italian painter Marcello Bacciarelli. The portrait of the king is hanging above the chimney. It's one of the favorite one of the king. He's presented here in his coronation robe. So this is the one that he was wearing in 1764, right after the celebration in a nearby cathedral. So you saw how the last king looked like. Now let's see where he met with the people. If you were to visit the king in the 18th century, an official audience would most probably take place in this room, in the throne room. Here there are 2 colors that dominate, golden and royal red. You can see a throne chair, which is original one, as all the thrones in this castle. But this one is very unique. Let's have a closer look at it. You can see that it's decorated with 86 embroidered silver eagles with golden crowns. All of them were recreated after the Second World War, thanks to one copy that survived and was found after the war in the United States. It was a very time-consuming process, because to make one of them, you need about 3 months of work. Even a king needed a rest after the full day in the office. Here we are in the most intimate interior in the castle. This is the bedchamber of the king. The character is mainly made by this dark chocolate U paneling, which is partially original. Unfortunately, the bed that you can see here has not survived till nowadays, so this is a copy that has been made basing on the documents that we had. King was traditionally, so our last king, King Stanislaw August, traditionally went to bed around midnight. He was wearing his long white sleeping gown and was wearing also a special sleeping cap. He was welcomed by a warm bed, because just before he went to sleep, they were warming up his bed with a special vessel. More than 250 years ago, a remarkable Italian painter came to Warsaw. His name was Bernardo Bellotto, but he's better known as Canaletto. He was on his way to St. Petersburg because he wanted to paint for Russian Empress, but he stayed in Warsaw because the last king of Poland, Stanislaw Augustus, liked his work so much that he said that he should stay here and paint for the king. In this room, we can see 23 paintings made by Canaletto. 22 of them represent different perspectives and different views of Warsaw. This was the idea of the king. All the guests that were visiting the king before meeting with the king were spending some time here in the room and could see and learn how the city of Warsaw is developing during the reign of the king. Let's have a look at one of them. This one on the left-hand side represents the city view from the side of Praga, so from the other side of the river. We can see here in the middle the Vistula River, and then above we can see nicely illuminated river facade of the castle, and next to it numerous small red roofs of the Old Town. The high roof in the Old Town is the cathedral, and then next to it you can see a high tower of the Jesuit church. In its history, the royal castle was not only the residence of Polish monarchs, but played an important role as the seat of Polish parliament. And among all the important events that this castle witnessed, probably the most glorious one was the adoption of the constitution. Here, on the 3rd of May, 1791, Polish constitution was adopted, the oldest one in Europe and the second oldest one in the world, right after the American one. Here in the corner of the room, we can see the copy of this constitution. After the adoption of the document, we will see what has happened next in the painting by a famous Polish painter, Jan Matejko. Matejko depicted what has happened right after the adoption of the constitution. In the painting behind me, you can see the streets of the Old Town with the tower of the castle in the background. You can see that this street is crowded with people. Those are members of parliament that are going towards the current-day cathedral. The person in the middle, dressed all in white, with the constitution holding his hand, is the Marshal of Polish Sejm, or the Speaker of Polish Parliament. This picture was painted by Matejko 100 years after the constitution was adopted. And this is actually a great example of 19th century storytelling, because in this painting, it's the story that is important and not so much the historical details. How do we know that? Look at the king. The king is also depicted in the left part of the painting. You can see him wearing his coronation robe, so the same one that you saw in the painting in the marble room. Was the king dressed up like that on the day of the adoption of the constitution? Rather not, but it's not so important because Matejko wanted to show how important the whole event was. Be sure that you have some energy left in the end of the visit to the royal castle just to see the paintings of Rembrandt. A couple of years ago, a pair of Rembrandt paintings was sold for 160 million euro. And do you know that actually 2/3 of all the Rembrandt paintings that are in Poland are here in Warsaw? Let's see them. So here we have two paintings. One of them depicts a girl. The girl is painted, but it seems that she's going to get off the frame just in a second. We don't know her name. She was painted in the 17th century, and even the clothes that she has are not very typical for the back then Netherlands. It's similar to another painting which presents the scholar at his writing table. Both of them don't represent any particular person, but it's more a study model of a person. Both of them were in the collection of our last king, King Stanislaw August, but came back to the castle in the end of the 20th century thanks to a Polish noble lady, Karolina Lanckorońska.